He's slick with sweat and blood, some of it his, some of it mine. And I'm losing grip on the gun. And as it came up, I saw it coming up in my face again. And I drew and we punched my gun out and I fired once. And he spun, like instantly. And as he was spinning and his body was turning, I see the gun coming up on the other side. And I saw a second one, which also strikes him.
Where'd you hit him?
The first one was point blank in the middle of his chest, perforated his aorta.
So that was a fatal shot, probably.
He was going to die from that no matter what. I blew his, but I don't know that.
Right.
And the other thing is, and it was one of the things that had to be explained to the grand jurors, because when they hear multiple shots, they don't understand how quickly one comes on in the back of the other.
Sure.
The two shots, and I actually demonstrated in the grand jury. That quick. And that was the end of the gunfight.
We're back in the palatial estates of Ossining, New York, our studio here. One more time for Police Off the Cuff with my partner in law enforcement, Bill Cannon. What's up, Bill?
Oh, man, I'm so excited about today. Great guest. We have an amazing guest.
Yeah, I'm excited, too. How you feeling? You just had...
Yeah, I had it for our audience out there, our audience of thousands. I just had a new hip put in a month ago, so I'm a little bit gimpy.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks, man. I heard that I will set off the alarm at the airport. They gave me a card for that, actually.
Oh, actually?
Just to show them.
You just have to give them a heads up.
Yeah, tell them, all right, I have some metal inside me, so, you know.
All right, well, I'm happy. Yeah, you doing all right?
Yeah, I'm doing much better, yeah.
All right, good. We got a special guest here, so I'm not going to hold back on it. Let me just give you an idea. In 1992, Nasty Nas, later known as the rapper Nas, drops his debut single titled Halftime. On that record, he has a line that goes, "'Cause when it's my time to go, I wait for God with the 4-4. And the biters can't come near. And yo, go to hell to the foul cop who shot Garcia." Our guest today is the foul cop who shot Garcia. What's up, Michael O'Keefe?
Hey, what's going on, guys? Really
Michael O'Keefe is a former NYPD. You were a detective?
Yeah, I was a first-grade detective.
A first-grade detective, and he's also an author. He's written the book Shot to Pieces, and you have a brand new book out now.
I actually have a short novella that's available on Amazon called Not Buried Deep Enough, but I'm probably going to drop a book of short stories first or second week of June.
All right, that's great, man.
This is a true renaissance, man. All you cops out there with those short arms and deep pockets, just go on Amazon and buy his book, Shot to Pieces. Support one of our own, all right? This is a real author. I know every cop thinks they're an author, but this guy really is an author. So
I'm 8 chapters in, and I'm loving the book.
It's a fascinating book.
But before we start, we jump ahead with how you got to being an author. Let's start off with that you were memorialized in a rap record. I think Nas is in the Rap Hall of Fame, the Hall of Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. If not, he will be soon.
I got to be honest with you, Mark. You're way more impressed with that than I am.
Well, I mean, if you really think about like pop culture and like history, you know, that you're more memorialized in this record that it basically is telling you a little piece of the time. There was an anger in the streets. Let's go back before we even get to Heights. You were almost on the job 6 years when that happened, right?
Yeah, almost 6 years exactly.
How old were you?
29.
29 years old. Okay. So you're working in the 3-4?
3-4.
And you know, you got to paint a little bit of a picture of the 3-4 in the 90s.
Yeah,
it was the 90s, right?
It was the old 3-4.
The 1990 to 3-4 had 129 murders because the 3-4 was 2 precincts. It's the 3-4, and as we know now, the 3-3. So it was a huge geographical area, and this was the crack wars, right?
Yeah, it was the.
And the wars up there were really for the turf. It wasn't the crack users; it was the crack sellers that were killing each other.
We're talking about, was it July 7th, 1992?
No, July 3rd.
July 3rd, 1992. I'm in the police academy. We got sworn in on June 30th that night, the midnight class. So on my third day in the academy, we get notified that we might be we're on standby for the riots in Washington Heights.
I ain't ready for this shit.
We don't know nothing.
I'm an academy kid.
We don't know nothing about anything. And I feel like we're taking this story out of place. You're 6 years on the job. You're working in anti-crime at the time?
Yeah.
All right.
For our listeners that might not know what anti-crime is, in New York City, every precinct has what's called an anti-crime unit, which works in plain clothes. There's usually a supervisor and 6 cops. They have 2 or 3 unmarked cars, and they do self-initiated work of street crime, shootings, robberies, violence on the street. They target that. They're not specifically responding to radio runs. They're self-initiated, and that's what anti-crime is.
And this precinct that you work in is predominantly Dominicans.
Yeah, it's largely Dominican, but there's a mix of African Americans on a couple of blocks on the south end. There's the old Irish up in Inwood, but for the most part, the heart of the precinct was almost exclusively Dominican. And
when you talked about crack, but there's regular cocaine, a lot of cocaine sales up there too, right?
At the time in the 90s, they were actually, most of their business, the heavy dealers, the cartels, was powder cocaine. You could literally, without getting out of your car, pull up to the corner of 162nd Street and St. Nicholas Avenue, hand over $17,000 and drive away with a kilo of cocaine. You didn't even have to tap your brakes. It was insane.
Dealing kilos in the street.
Yeah.
Amazing, right?
Like a cheese line.
Yeah, not even.
And where were most of the customers coming from? New Jersey? You saw those Jersey plates?
You got a lot of Jersey, you got a lot of Connecticut, you got a lot of upstate plates. Pretty much, Washington Heights is kind of a nexus to pretty much the whole eastern seaboard.
You have the George Washington Bridge bringing people in from Jersey. Mm-hmm. You have the 95, which is bringing people in from Connecticut. Mm-hmm. And then you have the Triborough Bridge, which will bring you in from Queens.
Yeah.
And also the 59th Street Bridge, or you could just head uptown.
Come right down to Deegan from upstate.
Drive.
Yeah.
It's like a hub. And then not only do you get in, and not only can you get there, but you can also get out real quick. So you're not driving through 2 or 3 miles of roads trying to get back onto a highway. As soon as you get your goods, you jump right back on the highway.
Yeah.
So it was 17 grand back then for a key on 116th Street?
17K.
162nd Street. I'm half Dominican, and I still have family there on 180th and Broadway. So I'm very connected to this story. I mean, we've had Ralph Friedman in here, and we had Tommy Kennedy, and they both talked about police shootings and their involvements in it. And, they're fascinating stories. But for some reason, talking to you, I feel like I'm connected more to it because I know that neighborhood so well. And tell us what it was like to work in that neighborhood, 1992.
Well, I thought it was a great neighborhood to work in. You hear cops talk about, I work in a shithole. The 3-4 was never a shithole. It was the most violent precinct in the city, but the people were clean, the buildings were clean, the streets were clean. It's a good place to get shot, but it was not, by any stretch of the imagination, a shithole. You could eat, you could shop.
Great. Yeah.
You had all your banking facilities on Broadway.
Were there any pretty girls there?
Oh, my goodness. You're going to get me in trouble. Yeah.
It's crazy, right?
It's
hot
extraordinarily beautiful.
Morena, Dominicana, Colombiana.
Beautiful Dominican girls. You got girls. Then, that area too was my parents came here in 1964. So the neighborhood, like my mother was from Czech Republic, and my father was Dominican. But you also had my uncle's wife was Greek. You had a lot of Greeks there. You had Irish there. A couple of them still remain. Mm-hmm. So that, like you said, and there was some African American blocks. So the neighborhood was kind of mixed. It was pretty nicely mixed up.
Yeah, you had a little bit of everything.
Yeah. So, but you mentioned that you can get shot and killed there.
Yeah. Well, at the time,
we're talking about basically at night when the drug dealing starts.
You can get it in the middle of the day too.
Really?
I was actually on a DOA on 160th Street when I was a rookie, and there were 2 homicides up the block before 11 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
I'm
on a fixer. I can't leave.
Right.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, you hear the screams and the shots up the block.
Uh-huh.
So I'm just putting over a script as they're fleeing. It's like,
And you're sitting on the DOA, so that's a crime scene, right?
and then I complained that the detective that responded, Sammy Gribben, was actually my training detective when I was a rookie in NSU in Midtown. And I complained that I'm stuck on a fucking DOA and I could have gone up the block and made 2 homicide calls. He says, hey, you want to be a gunfighter? These are the dues. I was like, all right, Sammy.
That's right.
Yeah.
So, but most of these murders are drug related.
They were back then, yeah. Yeah, just about all of them.
But the difficult thing back then, too, from an investigative standpoint, was a lot of times these hired guns came in from the Dominican Republic, right? They came in and they whacked somebody and they went on the next flight back to Santo Domingo, right?
A lot of times, if it was a beef between 2 big drug dealers, they would import outside talent.
Okay.
And they stood out. I mean, as an anti-crime cop, he doesn't belong.
Why is that? Tell me. Well, what is
They
it?
just look different.
The
They
clothes are
walk
different,
different.
right?
They speak different. They're. I actually had a Hispanic cop tell me, because they're Jibaros.
Yeah.
I'm like, Jibaros. He
From
goes,
the
yeah, they're
mountains.
hillbillies.
From the mountains.
They don't fit. Yeah, they're from the mountains.
The clothes are a little
like, oh,
different.
okay.
The walk is a little different. Even the Spanish that they speak, there's a lot of like nuances to it that are different than like a New York Dominican speaking Spanish.
Yeah, they don't sound like Cardi B.
No.
But, they stood out, and they're people that you want to watch. And you know what? You're walking down the street with an Intratec under your shirt, I'm going to see it.
An Intratec, you're talking about a machine gun.
A machine pistol, yeah.
It fires 9mm or 45, right? Depending on
Yeah, it depends on how it's
set up.
Yeah.
So you're riding around, is it 3 of you in the car, 4 of you?
It depends. Depends on how many guys were in to work that day. You had a lot of downtime with court because we were locking so many people up. But ordinarily, the night of the shooting...
What were your tours then?
We had it was a modified 4 to 12 tour. It was like 2 to 10:30.
Okay, so 2 in the afternoon.
Yeah, which was
1400.
Which was actually the most jumping stretch of time. Things started to slow down right around midnight. As you approach midnight, and then they picked up again. Believe it or not, from like maybe 1 to 3 o'clock in the morning, and then it went dead. But
you're in plain clothes.
Plain clothes. I looked like. I used to break it up. Sometimes I'd wear a hoodie and sunglasses, and I could pass for anybody on the neighborhood. As long as you didn't make eye contact, you could be a fly on the wall and watch people.
Because so many different people were coming up to that neighborhood for different purposes, right? Of all different persuasions, races, right?
Yeah, it was a mix.
The
easiest thing for me to fit in as, and at the time I had one flowing head of rock star hair. I looked like Eddie Vedder. Man, I wish I had that hair now. I just looked like a white boy from Jersey buying drugs, or a construction worker. It's easy to look like a construction worker. So
Are you trying to do hand to hands, or no? You just
we didn't,
observing, right?
Pretty much when you're on a street set, there's a gun there. Okay, and what experienced cops come to learn.
When you talk about a street set, you're talking about there's a corner, and on the corner there's a couple of guys who deal drugs on that corner. That's their corner, so that's their set.
Yeah, it's a couple more than a couple, but there's definitely a gun on the street. Usually they used to keep it under a garbage can, or under a step of a broken stoop, in the wheel well of a car.
Tire, right on the tire.
Right, and what you would do is, you'd go up and down the blocks until you found one that we called it raised up. It's where everybody on the block, obviously something's going on there. You don't know the history. You don't know who's beefing with who. But if everybody on that corner is raised up and their head's on a swivel, they're looking for trouble. It's going to be some trouble.
Right.
So you would set yourself up where you'd have a view of that area. And sure enough, you'd hear shots fired come over the radio.
You guys are going on the roofs too, or you just sit in the cars?
We would go over roofs. We would go through alleyways. It was labyrinthine behind the building.
Using binoculars?
Sometimes you'd use binoculars if you were far enough away, but if you snuck in through the backyards from another block and came up on the stairwell that leads down behind the building where they put the supers used to put the garbage cans,
right,
you'd be right at street level. And you could just put your hood up and just watch. You didn't need binoculars for that.
Now, I know on 147th Street they used to have lookouts on the roof. Did they have those on 162nd too?
I never encountered a lookout on the roof, but they're all over the street. I mean, as soon as a police car And unmarked cars, I mean, you jump out of an unmarked car 3 or 4 times in a neighborhood.
They know the car.
Not only do they know the car, they know that car better than the blue and whites.
Yeah.
So pretty much the only thing you can use that car for now is to raise them up, to get them moving around.
Uh-huh.
So,
And why do you want them moving around?
because that's when they're going to go for the gun.
Leave the least amount of people in the corner.
And then the other aspect is none of these illegal gun owners had holsters.
Mm-hmm.
They're tucking a big piece of iron right into their waist.
Uh-huh.
Now, if he has to walk, a gun unbalances you. You're trying to keep it from falling out of your pants, and you end up walking, and it looks like a limp, but it's not really a limp. It's a gun limp.
Yeah, they're wearing it with sweatpants.
It's not like my hip limp.
Yeah, exactly. So there's another reason why a lot of guys used to complain they didn't want to work in the rain because nothing was going on.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, there's a lot going on because every guy with a gun that's walking down the street has to jump over the puddles.
Mm-hmm.
The first thing he's grabbing as he jumps over is that gun. So I made a lot of gun collars.
That's
in the
good.
rain.
That's excellent observation. I don't know if that type of observation exists anymore.
So you're watching these
I don't
guys
know.
and their body language, and you can tell just by looking at them that they got a gun on them. Just by the way they're constantly trying to fix it, adjust it, the weight of it in somebody's pants. You become keen on looking for that, right?
Well, what it is you spot you become suspicious.
Mm-hmm.
So now you look closely, and you look for some other trigger to raise your suspicion to the level of reasonable suspicion, reasonable cause to believe that a crime or he's possessing a weapon. At that point, now you're authorized by law to go give him a rub. Stop, question, and frisk.
Right.
A rub.
Yeah, rub. Yeah.
A toss, we used to call it. A rub, a toss.
A rub, a toss.
But I hate when.
And what are you looking for? A burner, a hot lunch?
I hate when the media refers to stop, question, and frisk as stop and frisk. And they do it on purpose.
Yeah.
Because they leave out 33% of what that law is.
Yeah.
And the question part sometimes raises it higher to the probable cause, you know. And they do it on purpose. I want to slap them when they do that, you know. Now, poor cops these days, I don't even know if they're using stop, question, and frisk anymore because it's so invasive to them.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You said you mentioned 2 things for a gun. You said burner, and the other one was
Hot lunch.
I never heard hot lunch.
Hot lunch is a street crime expression.
Yeah,
I like
think.
that.
Yeah.
Well, you all adopted it.
Get
Though.
hot lunch.
He's got a
I
hot
love
lunch
that,
on him.
Well, you know
Hot
what it
lunch.
is? Especially when you do a car stop, if he's in the back of the car and I'm in the front and he discovers a gun, if he says gun, all the guys in the car are going to take off to the races.
Yeah, no.
So you use a code word. You say, I got hot lunch. And now you remember, everyone knows what that means except the perps. They don't know. They think you're going to the bodega for some, you know.
Well, now they know. They're going to know now.
They're going to know after they
I'm
have
sure
the
they
cuffs
knew,
put on them.
they knew words out.
By the
Hot
time,
lunch is a code word.
they knew by the time the 90s were over. We had to change our terminology at that point. So good to go. Good to go is another one.
Yeah. I remember there was always jukes was a word for robbery, and I'm listening to these guys talk.
Jukes,
Jukes, and I don't know what the fuck they were saying, but you start learning the words from the street when you start doing, investigating robberies.
Yeah.
And so so he's got a hot lunch, right? So, but you're talking about an observation made. When you're doing the one that you're in the back of the building, looking out to where the super puts the garbage, and those you park the car somewhere, and now you're on foot doing the observation.
Yeah.
And other times you're doing car stops. Are you doing a lot of car stops to get the guns?
We didn't work too much off of car stops. It was. If you're looking for a gun in Washington Heights back then, it was kind of, stationary was good enough.
Mm-hmm.
Every block was a target-rich environment. Mm-hmm. What do I need to be driving around and stopping cars? Possibly the most dangerous confrontation you can be in.
Right.
Because you can't see what's going on.
I just thought because of the people coming in that those were easy grabs when you see the Jersey plates, the Connecticut plates.
Yeah, but I wasn't interested in drug collars, and I wasn't allowed to take them anyway.
You were looking to get the guns. All right. So
and occasionally
that was the thing back then. It was really frowned upon for anti-crime to make drug arrests because of the whole corruption component. Then I think that next time Bratton came back, all of a sudden he like, oh no, forget about that. Anyone can make drug arrests, but. As a plainclothes guy, making a drug arrest is a pain in the ass, too.
Speaking of Bratton, I saw him in the street the other day.
Yeah.
Former
You asked him to
commissioner.
come on the show or what?
I didn't, I dropped the ball. I didn't ask him. I was actually kind of nervous. I didn't want to bother him. He lives in that neighborhood. So I came up to him and I said, excuse me, Bill, I just wanted to say that I'm retired from the job. I did 20 years. And me and my friend Bill, we got a podcast. I started plugging the podcast. I gave him a card. I said, we'd love for you to listen. And then I said, he said he would. And he was very kind. Then I dropped the ball. I says, all right, good luck. Well, why am I saying good luck to him for? I should have said you were a great commissioner because he was. And if he is listening, I just want you to know that we really appreciated your
I think
time
he was
on the job.
better the first time with de Blasio. He looked so frustrated being the PC under de Blasio, right?
Probably.
Well, yeah, I mean, I pity anyone that has to work for that moron. Poor Jimmy O'Neill.
Oh, good.
You just couldn't have a worse boss. Although, you know what, it's pretty close with David Dinkins.
Well,
bad.
that brings us back to the story. We're talking about 1992. We're talking about you got 6 years on the job. The mayor at the time, this is very, very important, is Mayor David Dinkins. Tell us what it was like. I was in the academy at the time. Bill, Michael, both of you worked under Bill. You were already cops. You had 6 years on. I don't know how many years you had on. What was it like to work when Dinkins was mayor?
Well, basically, crime was out of control, so no one minded that part of it. But he wasn't supportive to the police.
Yeah, he didn't want you doing
He
anything
didn't want
about
you
it
doing
either.
anything. Yeah.
But I knew he was bad news before he was even mayor. In October of 1988, 2 police officers were killed in Manhattan, an hour and 100 blocks apart from each other. Christopher Hoban, the undercover from Manhattan North Narcotics, was killed during a buy on...
It's in the 2-4.
Yeah, I think it was 104th Street,
Yeah.
104th, in that vicinity.
Yeah.
And an hour later, Michael Busick basically interrupted a drug robbery at 161st Street and Broadway, and he was killed. David Dinkins was the Democratic candidate for mayor, for the upcoming mayoral election. And that double funeral, which took place at Our Lady of Lourdes in Brooklyn, instead of electing to go to that funeral, he instead went to Rikers Island to tell the pretrial detainees that he values them in this city and he was going to get them to vote. Wow. Rather than go to a double police funeral.
Yeah, horrible.
So I knew...
and that was when he was running.
When?
He was running against who? Koch already had served his terms, right?
He, in the first election, he ran against Giuliani and beat him.
Okay.
Yeah. But not by much. It was a close election.
Because Koch did his 2 terms, and then it was Giuliani against Dinkins.
Koch did, I think, 3 terms.
All right.
Yeah.
And then it was Giuliani against Dinkins, and Giuliani lost. Dinkins won.
Yeah,
Right.
but there was a lot of suspicion that there was some fraud with respect to the voting.
Okay.
And there were an awful lot of votes coming in from Washington Heights. And there weren't that many documented citizens living in Washington Heights that voted for David Dinkins. So for the next election, Giuliani got a lot of grassroots support from the cops, who all worked as poll watchers.
Yeah,
and a lot of
Some
these
Dominican collusion.
yeah, how about that? Yeah.
It's a dumb collusion.
Yeah.
So Dinkins is mayor. He's not a big fan of the cops, huh?
No, he hates us.
He hates it.
Hates
But
us.
even though he's not a fan of the cops, you're still going out there and being a damn good cop regardless.
Yeah, I didn't work for him.
Mm-hmm.
I put my hand in the air. I made a vow.
When you first came on, what was the year that you came on?
1986.
And you went to the 3-4 right away?
No, I went my first 6 months, and I met my wife there, actually. We were rookie cops together. I was in NSU 3.
It's in the
which
South,
covered,
right?
Yeah, Midtown.
Yeah.
I did 6 to 2s with Sundays and Mondays off, and I had a steady foot post on the Deuce.
Oh, in Times Square?
Yep, 42nd Street from
As
8th.
a rookie?
As a rookie, from 8th to Broadway.
That must have been something.
And that was back when...
That was rocking the Deuce.
Yeah,
That was before-
you couldn't swing at
Before
that
the
cat
Disney
without
store
making a
was there,
robbery.
right?
Yeah, there
was a Disney store there?
There was no Disney store there.
There was peep shows there?
Oh, man.
A lot of pornographic theaters. Yeah, you had then you had the
Meet the girl of your dreams there? You could get
who
some
might
drugs.
turn out to be a dude.
Yeah.
So yeah,
That was like a school for crime. People used to come from all over the city to ply their trade in Midtown, right?
yeah. A lot
We
of
used to
crime
take the
losses,
train
a lot of
in.
robbers.
Thieves, yeah.
You know, that was the pilgrimage you took in if you lived in an outer borough. I think we were like 13.
Yeah.
years old. The boys from my block, we all got on the train. We took into Times Square.
To buy the fake ID that doesn't fool anyone.
Yeah, the fake ID.
Garbage.
They were garbage IDs. I don't know, but then we used to go to the peep shows. And then you became a man.
We didn't realize how dangerous it was going into Times Square back then either. Right?
Well, as a rookie cop, I used to hide in the lobby of the Victory Theater across the street, and it overlooked where you went to go buy your fake ID.
Okay.
Because they also sold holsters, like really shitty holsters, but holsters for guns. And you'd see these guys come in, and before they would buy the holster, they'd pull out the hand cannon
see if it fit.
to see if it fit the holster. So I'd be like, all right, him. And then he'd walk out and I'd hook him up.
Wait a minute.
I made my first 3 gun collars.
You're
like
a rookie.
Yeah.
You're a rookie right now.
Yeah.
You're just fresh out of the academy.
Yeah.
How do you even know about guns? And who taught you about that?
I grew up in the city, brah. I know a lot about guns.
You had this thing where you wanted to get the guns off the street right away, even as a rookie.
Guns are sexy collars.
Yeah. Good for you, man. God bless you.
The deuce was bad news back then. I mean,
but
I
I'm
knew
just
another
saying,
guy that used that same technique, Walter Neville. Did you know him? Yeah. He told me he used to do the same exact thing. And he made
I didn't invent the tactic.
He made about 30
a lot of guys
but I'm
did.
saying, okay, I get it. You get to a precinct, you got a couple of years on the belt, somebody starts showing you. This is how, no, you right out of the gate, you position yourself right there in Times Square. You're picking people off buying holsters.
The other advantage that I had is I was an active cop. Right.
Where did you grow up?
Ridgewood in Queens.
Okay.
Borderline of Brooklyn and Queens.
Where'd you go to high school?
St. Francis Prep.
Oh, cool, man.
Yeah.
Cool. I went to St. John's Prep.
Ooh, that was Monte Cristi.
Yeah, it was Monte Cristi. I was the first year of St. John's Prep.
Oh, okay, cool.
I mean, so cool. I
Two
know who you
good
are.
Catholic boys. Were either of you guys altar boys?
I went to boarding school, so I was about a couple of weeks, and I got kicked off for cursing.
All right.
I was beaten and cursed out and chased away in 7th grade.
What, from being an altar boy?
Yeah, I had the mark of Satan, I guess. Monsignor Ronahan didn't like me, and guess what?
Consider yourself blessed.
Guess what? You don't get to hit me.
Yeah, I'll do something else.
I'll take your beating and I'll take my father's beating when I get home, but you don't get to hit me.
So put us back to Times Square. You're picking off people, buying holsters and taking their hand cannons out and trying it in the holster. And you're making your first gun collars right out of the academy.
I'm making gun collars. I'm making
robbery collars. What do the bosses
collars.
think of a kid who's doing that?
We got to get him the hell out of Manhattan South. That's what they think.
Because, I mean, it really is unusual. Yeah. I mean, you were like... Most rookies aren't doing that. They're trying to write a parking summons.
I worked with a handful of guys who were heavy hitters like me, and they
right
basically and they went. A handful of them went to the 3-4 with me. That's because the training detective was Sammy Gribbin, who was an old 3-4 cop, and he said, "You don't belong in Midtown. You belong uptown." So we followed Sammy
because you were rough around the edges. You were
yeah. And then a handful of guys went to Brooklyn North. The guys that were rubbing people for guns as rookies, the bosses in Midtown South, Midtown North, and the 17th Precinct
didn't like it.
Didn't really want you there. They wanted doormen.
Yeah.
They wanted nice uniforms.
Yeah.
They didn't want.
You interrupted their tour of duty.
Well, it's political over there. If you're gonna really toss people and rub people. This sounds funny, rubbing people. You're gonna have to rub people that might actually have a job and might be able to make a complaint and know somebody. You don't have to worry about that kind of stuff when you're uptown.
You know what? The people I was rubbing on the deuce, you don't have to worry about jobs.
No.
Yeah, but you're talking about one specific area.
Yeah.
They weren't from Manhattan. They were from the Bronx. They were from Brooklyn.
Queens.
But this rookie group, this class that you came out with. So you were one of the people, like, right off the bat. They said, "Oh, we got this. We know we can put this guy somewhere. He wants to be busy."
Well, no. It didn't go down like that. You're in the academy. They give you 3 choices. You might as well crumple that up and throw it in the garbage because nobody's looking at it. However, I had an uncle who was a sergeant in Major Case. And he said, "Where do you want to go?" I was like, "Well, I'm hearing good things about Midtown. Let me go see what that's like." So he puts me there. And I do my 6 months there. And I'm killing them.
Was it NSU or FTU?
They didn't call it FTU. It was NSU, Neighborhood Stabilization Unit. And I never worked in the North. I never worked in the 17th. I did the whole 6 month on 42nd Street.
Right.
And it was coming to an end, and it was time for the permanent precinct assignments. And my uncle comes up to me, he says, "Where you want to go? I can get you in Midtown North." I'm like, "Nah, I don't want to go to Midtown North. I want to stay in Manhattan because I know the court system now. I know the DAs. I want to go where I can be the most busy. I'm hearing good things about the 3-4. And he laughs. He goes, "You don't need me to get to the 3-4. You can use the precinct broom to get there." I was like, "All right, Uncle Jack, put me up in the 3-4. He goes, "I'll do it. But you got to promise me, if your Aunt Kay asks, you got yourself in trouble and this is where they sent you." I had nothing to do with it.
Oh, my God.
I'm like, "Oh, yeah, all right. No sweat." So that's how I ended uptown.
So you're uptown, and how long did it take before you get up to anti-crime?
Let's see.
If I had to guess, I'd say 6 months.
No. There were a lot of real good cops out there. And guys with some time. Who were on the list to go before you. I think I did a year of the 9 squad chart, if you remember that.
Yeah.
It's rotating shifts.
How was patrol up there?
It was berserk. Day tours, you're not going anywhere because of the traffic. 4 to 12s, a lot of activity, a lot going on,
There is
a lot of people on the streets.
Yeah, it's
I
crazy.
still go to see my grandma.
Oh, it's impossible. It's impossible.
I remember I was in the 2-4 during this time. And I remember a couple times I'd flown up to the 3-4, and they had told me that on the C squad, 40% of all the cops that were doing 4 to 12s had been in shootings.
Yeah.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah, that's about right.
4 out of 10 guys had been in shootings. How many precincts across the city could you get a statistic like that? And it was like, yeah, you better be ready when you're on patrol that you may have to shoot somebody, or get shot at,
That was the 9 squad, the 2 weeks of days, 2 weeks of nights, 1
like
week
that.
of midnights tour that you were doing?
I did that for about a year, and then I had the opportunity to go to Steady Late tours.
Midnights.
Yeah, and Steady Late tours, that was an excellent tour to work for a working cop.
Yeah.
Fewer bosses, because as any working cop will tell you, the greatest detriment to police work is police supervision. So
That's true.
And you had basically everybody that was working on midnights. They were businessmen, and their side business was arrests. They were making collars. They were looking for bad guys, and they were looking to go to court in the morning. And you made your most overtime working late tours. So it was a very business-like approach. And everybody handled their business, and because it was a steady tour and everybody knew everybody, we were very tight, and it was a good environment to work.
You making gun collars then?
Oh, left and right.
Nice.
My last partner on late tours ended up being my partner in anti-crime also, Tommy McPartland, legendary gun guy. Joke would go around that I had metal detectors for hands. Okay. Tommy McPartland had ESP. He was amazing. He'd spot a guy from a half a block away and say, "That guy." And you get up on him, and sure enough, he had a burner on him.
Oh,
wow. So Tommy actually just retired. He was the lieutenant. He was the CO of the firearms investigation unit, doing the undercover gun buys.
Wow.
So he
Probably
just
met him.
finally packed it in. Probably.
Because I was a detective. I was doing the training for detectives, and they used to come and speak at the academy, our homicide course.
Yeah.
So you're in anti-crime. You got 6 years on.
Mm-hmm.
And what tour were you doing that day?
I was doing the anti-crime 4 to 12, the 2:30 to 10:30, like that. And yeah.
What brings you to 162nd Street over there? Was it St. Nicholas?
Sun's not down yet.
Is it St.
summer,
Nicholas?
obviously. Yeah,
Or
it's St.
Amsterdam?
Nicholas. St. Nicholas. It's where St. Nicholas and Amsterdam crisscross. It's St. Nicholas is at the top of the block, which I know now, but unfortunately, the day of that shooting, I didn't know it well enough. But we'll get to that. We're basically taking a tour of the precinct, and it's blisteringly hot. It had rained a little earlier in the tour, like that real humidity rain. And now it's just blazing hot. It's got to be, it feels like 170 degrees out there with the humidity. And
But you got the AC on in the car, right?
no, of course not. You got the windows open to hear the gunshots. Just enough so that the tinted windows are covering your face, but you can hear. I see the traffic's not moving. You come to a standstill. We're on St. Nick heading
How many guys
south.
in the car?
There's 3 of us. There's me, McPartland's driving, and Brad Asani's in the back seat.
So you're the passenger seat.
Yeah, front
shotgun.
passenger seat.
The
And,
recorder.
yeah, you don't record much in crime, but whatever. So I see this guy. First of all, he's wearing a heavy black sports jacket. It's 107 degrees out. It's inappropriately dressed. And he keeps grabbing the front lapel of the jacket and pulling it over the middle of his waist. And you can tell he's raised up. He's bouncing around. He's looking. He's walking back and forth. He's looking both ways. He looked coked up to me. Turns out he was. But in any event, I can see there's something really big under that jacket. I don't know what it is yet, but my guess is it's a burner. So since I made the spot, and I look the least like a cop in the team, Tommy says, "What do you want to do?" I'm like,
You still got the long hair?
"Yeah, I got the long hair. Ponytail. Yeah, I was wearing a ponytail that day." I said, "Go up a block and drop me off. I'm going to circle back around and I'm going to set up on the corner and keep my eye on the guy." They were going to circle around and come up from Broadway. Now the car, it was a locomotion car. My anti-crime team was the drug dealers and the bad guys all called us locomotion because of a sticker we had on the back window. It's actually a surfboard wax, locomotion.
Right.
But they identified the car. It was a big behemoth of a Chevy Caprice. And that called the local. Every time we came on a block, we were locomotion. So we're going to use the car now to flush the guy in my direction, because that's what's going to happen, right? He's going to walk away from the threat. Yeah, that wasn't such a good plan. The car hits the corner, and I hear "Bajando, agua, policía, locomotion." All of these alarms are going up, and the guy now tucks down into his waistband, turns around, and he starts walking toward the building on the corner. I was like, "Oh shit." Now, I haven't seen my partners come up the block yet, but I got to grab him before he gets into that building, because he gets into the building, he's gone.
Right.
And I get him right at the doorway. I have my shield out, and I grab him and I said, "Policía, no se mueve." And he gives me the best forearm I ever got in my life, right in the throat. But I hang on. And he's a big fucker. He's about 230 pounds. Taller than me. He basically looked like Sammy Sosa, because I got the creeps the first time I saw Sammy Sosa. It's like I thought I took care of that problem a couple of years ago. So he backs up, and now we're in the first hallway in the building, and we're fighting. And I go over the radio. I don't know where I am. I didn't expect to be in a building, so I didn't bother getting the address of this one. So I put over 162 in Amsterdam. I'm not at 162 in Amsterdam. I think I am, but I'm not. Now we end up fighting, and we end up falling.
You're in the vestibule of this building.
Well, now we fall into the inner hall, and it's got 15-foot high marble ceilings. It looks like a mausoleum.
Are there apartments that are?
They're upstairs.
There's no apartments on the first floor.
I don't believe there's any first floor apartments.
Because a lot of these buildings have apartments on the first floor. So
yeah, but I don't think this one did. Everything is above, because the store is on the corner, and that's basically got the whole first floor.
So this is just a lobby.
Yeah, pretty much.
Elevator in it. Probably mailboxes too.
No elevator.
No elevator.
But when I get into now the marble enclosure of the hallway, it looks like a mausoleum, which is fitting, because I didn't think I was getting out of there alive. I'm fighting this guy, trying to get his gun out of his waistband. And he's basically kicking the shit out of me. I end up getting him on the ground, and we get next to the wall. And I put over my last transmission, and I still don't have the location right. Cops are screaming over the radio, "Where the fuck are you?" I'm like, I don't know. But I'm fighting with this guy.
And you're going over the radio while you're fighting with him. You're still going over the radio while you're fighting.
Well, I lose the radio at that point. He knocks it out of my hand. So now it's laying on the ground, and I just hear it squawking. And now he's got his gun out in his hand. And he basically swings it at me, and he just misses me. And I jump back, but I grab him, and now we're wrestling again. And he manages to break free, and he runs to the back toward the stairwell. And I grab him just as he's getting to the stairs and yank him and turn around, and now I get hit right in the mouth with his gun.
Oof.
Now keep in mind, this is 5 minutes of fighting with him when it finally becomes a gunfight.
And people in this building, now they must be aware, for 5 minutes of fighting, everybody's looking out the door.
No door to look out.
So
there's no view.
So it's all full of shit.
There's no view from any of the apartments into that lobby.
That's
you would have to come down the stairs to actually see anything.
So that's interesting. Keep going.
So I grab his hand, and I'm pulling the gun away and holding it away, but he's slick with sweat and blood, some of it his, some of it mine. And I'm losing grip on the gun. And as it came up, I saw it coming up in my face again, and I drew, and we punched my gun out, and I fired once. And he spun, like instantly. And as he was spinning and his body was turning, I see the gun coming up on the other side, and I saw a second one, which also strikes him.
Where'd you hit him?
The first one was point blank in the middle of his chest, perforated his I think his aorta, if I remember the.
So that was a fatal shot, probably.
He was going to die from that no matter
what.
I blew his, but I don't know that.
Right.
And the other thing is, and it was one of the things that had to be explained to the grand jurors, because when they hear multiple shots, they don't understand how quickly one comes on in the back of the other.
Sure.
The two shots, and I actually demonstrated in the grand jury, that quick. And that was the end of the gunfight.
Right.
He hits the floor. He drops his gun and it clatters across the floor. And the first thing I do, because I've seen guns disappear,
grab the gun.
I grab his gun and I put it in my waist.
That's right.
I holster my own. And now I'm going to handcuff him, because that's what you got to do. Right. I know I put him down, but it's time to cuff him. But I'm so exhausted, I can't get his arm out from underneath his body. And I'm like, screw this, so I front cuffed him. And I still don't know where I am, and people are freaking out on the radio, trying to find me. I'm like, I'm going to be in here all week if I don't put over an address. And I don't like it here right now, so I better go get the radio. So I find the radio in the hallway, and I try and put my location over again. And I'm wrong again. And I hear my partner, Tommy McPartland, yell, Mike, where the fuck are you? I was like, fuck, I don't know. So I walk out now to the front of the building, and I open the door a crack, and I look up, and I'm like, oh, okay, 505 West 162.
Wow.
And I'm putting that over on my way back to the body, or to the perp, because I don't know he's dead. He actually might not be yet. But as I'm walking back to him, I put over the address, lobby, I got a perp down, roll the bus. And now the adrenaline kicks in, and I'm like shaking out, covered in blood. I don't know this, but when the first two uniforms come in the door, Johnny D'Alessandro and Billy Nolan, great cops. Johnny was a first grade detective. Billy retired as a sergeant.
I worked with him. He was in the
4-4
3-4 squad when I was in Homicide.
Yeah. Johnny was a great detective. But him and Billy show up, and they come in, and they run right away, come over, and they grab me, and they start trying to strip my clothes off. I'm like, what the fuck are you doing?
They thought you were hit.
They're like, where are you shot? Where are you shot? I'm like, I'm not shot. And then I look, and I got blood all over me. I'm like, oh, that's his. And I'm like, this is his gun. And now everybody else starts coming in, and they're like, come on, let's go. And they grabbed me, and they threw me in a radio car and took me right to Columbia Presbyterian. For at the time, we didn't say ring in our ears. It was
Tinnitus, isn't it called? Tinnitus.
Tinnitus.
Something like that,
yeah. But they didn't say that back then. In '92, it was still trauma.
Right.
You admitted it was trauma.
What's tinnitus?
It's ringing
in your ears. Okay. That's all it is. But they end up bringing me to Columbia. And turns out the reason why my partners didn't see where I had gone is half the way up the block, a guy with a 357 is chasing another guy across 162nd Street and practically runs into the car. So now they hear me go putting over my 85 before it was a 13, and they think that it's involved with me, and they bail and they chase this guy, and they take him all the way up to St. Nick. They make the left, and they get as far as 163rd Street when they tackle him, and they end up pulling the gun off him. Well, that's the point where it becomes a 13, and I'm freaking out on the radio. And they were like, fuck this guy. And they basically let him go, put the gun in their pocket, and then came around the block looking for me. And they still couldn't find me until they put the address over. But they were, you could hear the panic.
This guy's in a lobby with a guy with a gun.
Hey,
there's another guy running down the street with a gun.
That's a scary thing.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, how long,
yeah, pretty much.
How long did it take after that shooting for it to become, what we later knew as the Washington Heights riots?
Well, 1 second. Let's go back to the one thing that they brought you to the trauma, right?
Columbia Press.
The emergency room.
They got you out of the scene.
Right.
Right? They pulled you out of that scene, which was really turns out to be a blessing in disguise. Right?
It really wouldn't have mattered. It was kind of contained.
So
Nobody was going in there.
So
but
right
the
there,
police.
we don't know anything that's going on yet. This didn't even start brewing. The rumors that Bill was about to lead into, all the talking that's going to go on. How long did that take? Hours? A day?
Middle of July 4th. So it took about a day.
But this was handled as obviously a police shooting.
Yeah.
And probably the Manhattan North Homicide Squad,
They were involved.
in conjunction with Internal Affairs, investigated this, right?
Internal Affairs wasn't involved yet. The squad basically.
Well, they used to have a shooting team that investigated police shootings.
I don't think they had it then.
They didn't have it
I don't
yet.
think they started the shooting team.
Because look, I was in homicide.
And they called it the force team.
Yeah, but I was in homicide for almost 10 years, and we investigated police shootings. But they used to have Internal Affairs come with us.
Yeah.
And basically just watch what we were doing because they didn't have a fucking clue what we were doing.
And if they had information, they weren't giving it to you anyway.
No.
Whatever.
But this had to be investigated as a...
Well, it starts out as a squad
Yeah,
case. It's
yeah.
a police shooting.
Also, it starts off as just a police shooting at this point.
Yeah.
And you're in the trauma?
Well, I'm at the hospital for a couple of hours.
Yeah.
The duty inspector turns out to be Campisi.
IAB, later on the chief of IAB.
Yes.
Yeah.
But Campisi's the duty inspector, and he comes to look at me in the hospital, and he basically has me strip, and he's just checking my bruises and stuff.
He's foolish. That guy's
Well, he actually, believe it or not, he testified on my behalf in the civil trial, and he was good for me.
Yeah.
That's the only good thing I'll ever say about him.
Yeah, no, he wasn't. He didn't have a good reputation.
He was a bad guy, and he knew where the bodies were buried, and he got away with a lot of shit he shouldn't have been allowed to get away with.
He was a cheese eater from way back.
Yeah. But the investigation now goes back to the 34th precinct. Crime scene comes, they check my gun out, recover the spent shells, take the pictures. Everything's everything. You're instructed by the union, you're not going to make an official statement yet.
We had the 48-hour rule back then.
48-hour rule.
They lost that, though. Didn't they lose that?
It's still kind of obeyed in abeyance.
Well, if the DA's office is going to read your Miranda, you don't talk.
Yeah.
But if they're going to act like, oh yes, just tell your story, I think I'm going to hold off.
Wait. We're going to wait.
Yeah. Yeah.
But when I leave that night, and it was probably about 2 o'clock in the morning when I finally, it might have been later than 2 o'clock in the morning, when I leave to go home. Huey Drain is the catching detective up in the 3-4 squad. Great old guy. And Huey says, you're going to be okay, kid. This looks like a bunt. I was like, okay, Huey, thanks a lot. It meant a lot coming from him.
Yeah, sure.
It's a real experienced guy. And so I go home thinking it's a bunt. I go to sleep, and my girlfriend comes over, checks on me. Later, my wife. We were engaged at the time. And she goes out shopping, and she actually buys me a new hooded long-sleeve T-shirt for anti-crime use. Not knowing that I've worked the last hour of anti-crime in my life.
Career is over.
It was a very nice shirt, though.
Now you need some suits.
So she comes, she wakes me up. We're going to go out to a friend's barbecue out in Seaford. And so we're out there. It's nice, hanging out, watching the sun go down. And she gets Janet was in SP10 in the 13th precinct. And they actually were the first cops on the job, uniform cops that were given cell phones. Because they used to get calls from the desk to go handle these past complaints. Mm-hmm. So she always had this cell phone with her. Her partner, Pete, who actually worked that day, didn't take off, calls her cell phone. We're at the barbecue. Mm-hmm. And she says, and Pete West, God rest his soul, passed away last year. Great guy. Pete says...
was he a cop in the 3-0?
No, he was a sergeant in Brooklyn South. I think he finished up in the 6-0. But he was a Manhattan South cop. But Pete says, Janet, why am I on a rooftop in Washington Heights and your boyfriend is being burned in effigy?
Oh my God.
So I was like, what? She's like, yeah, they're burning a dummy saying it's you. I'm like, give me the fucking phone. Let me talk to him. That was the first inkling I had that bunt that had a seam in the carpet and gone into left field. So I was like, I better call somebody. So I ended up calling the 3-4 squad. I get Jerry Giorgio. And thank God, Big
Jerry.
Daddy. God rest his soul. He passed away last year, too.
Rest in peace.
Jerry was my mentor. He was the guy I wanted to grow up to be.
Yeah, he spoke at the Homicide course, too.
Amazing. I'm actually... sidebar, I'm actually going to be speaking at the Homicide course this year.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to
watch.
it. Yeah. So, but he says, listen, it's a lot of bullshit in the air. They're rioting out there in the streets. He says, the drug dealers are pushing this thing. He goes, it's all make-believe. Give it a day or two. It'll all calm down. You're going to go sick and you're going to stay home. And don't worry about it. Eddie Mahoney will take care of it.
What was the protocol back then after a shooting? When you got involved in the shooting? Well, how long were you supposed to stay home? When can you go back?
Well, they took your guns, right? They didn't take your guns.
No, they actually made a mistake with it. They were supposed to take my guns. Not only did they give me my guns back, they gave me the spent shells. Oh, wow. And I was like, and I said to the guys in crime scene, I'm like, I think these are supposed to go to the lab.
Yeah, I think so.
And they're like, nah, that's no problem. Just fine. They're yours. Keep them as a souvenir. I'm like, okay. I didn't keep them as a souvenir. I kept them on my dresser top because I knew they were going to be needed. Somebody's going to want these things. So,
did you have a Glock back then?
No. I had the Ruger 38.
Okay.
Very nice gun.
Because it was said that the Glock didn't, forensically, they couldn't really read the rifle. The rifle. Because of the barrels. Yeah. I don't know. But with, the brass catcher with the brass, that's got to be readable.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Brass catcher is there's an extractor machine inside a 9mm that makes the same exact mark every time on a brass shell that it ejects from the gun. And it's scientific. There's a machine called brass catcher, and it can positively identify the brass from the exact 9mm it was fired from, just to give that scientific explanation to our millions of listeners.